Surprise.
Skylar's going in blind. Go ahead. Go finish
Going in blind. That's it.
This is all about you today, buddy. This is all about you. I think this
Welcome
is
to the Skylar Fiction Show, everybody.
subscribe and make the world a better place.
Yes. Please subscribe and make the world. That's exactly right, guys.
Yeah. This is
an awesome show.
I think Heretical Weekend's number 30. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, guys?
I don't know.
Nobody seems to know. We've done so many. It's we lose track, and my memory is just not great. So if it's not 30, then fuck it. It's 30 now. So welcome everyone. Heretical Weekend's number 30. Worldviews and woo-woos is the subject today. For all of you that are celebrating Easter, we point and laugh. Joining me today, the normal crew with one small addition. We have Gavin Guy, of course,
Hey.
Turtle, and Skylar Fiction, who, he has some free time. If Skylar drops out of the conversation, we all know why. He just kind of Batman's out of this thing. Like,
I know when to jump off a sinking ship, sir.
yeah, exactly. There's a smoke bomb and a grapple hook, and next thing you know, he's off fucking camera somewhere. So, Worldviews and Woos, and I gotta say, before we get started, Gavin Guy, who makes, I think, a pretty good hobby of finding the most disturbing pictures as his avatars. That's a really good one. What's that one from?
It's a piece of art.
It looks like Donnie Darko.
Yeah, I think it's Donnie Darko inspired.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can't say.
If you haven't noticed, rabbits are a theme with my avatars, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you own a rabbit? Have you ever got to actually own a rabbit?
No, I really have a really bad allergy to rabbits. Like, my face just blows up, and
Oh, wow.
I can't get anywhere near them.
And doesn't it have to do with sort of that Gabba Guy thing, like the little animal?
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
That's the reason.
You're allergic to rabbits.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it?
That's crazy. All right. All right, then.
I'm going to try to get this baby. I can't believe this baby woke up. I'm going to try to get her to sleep. I'm going to be back in a second.
Okay. There he goes.
Of course the
Skylar.
baby woke up.
I'm kind of
Babies
fascinated to like watch Skylar walk through his house, though.
Yeah.
Oh, he's adorable. All right, if he's gonna go off camera or not, but worldviews and woo-woos, and the reason this topic was chosen today is because I don't know if worldviews have been discussed as a topic per se, because it comes up a lot. And I just finished watching a debate between some guy, I don't remember whose name is, some Australian pastor guy, and Dan Barker. And the Australian pastor guy was a pre-supper. But the topic of the debate was, does an afterlife exist? And the pastor guy tried to turn it into a battle of worldviews, as pre-suppers do, right? Like, just ignores the topic and just goes straight to the worldview versus worldview sort of position or argument. And I noticed this has sort of been a running theme, right? Especially on YouTube and Google Plus these days, you hear the Christian worldview, right, or the atheist worldview. And I heard Trey in a hangout with Xbox Fiend say something to the effect of, well, I've shown your worldview to be incoherent, therefore it's wrong, or or something something along those lines, right? It doesn't work. It's faulty, like, because
Reduce it to absurdity.
Yeah, pre-suppers, let's say, reduced to absurdity. I think Trey assumed that because he felt his argument was like, I guess, shown to be indefeatable, that Xbox Fiend's entire worldview is incoherent based off of this one thing. And it kind of got me thinking. I'm saying to myself, can a worldview be, like, someone's entire worldview be incoherent or wrong or does not work or faulty or however you want to put it, or absurd, just based on off of one thing? And so I got a couple of definitions. I kind of want to bounce them off you guys and maybe get your definition starting off here on what a worldview actually is to you guys. A couple of definitions. If you put in the Google search worldview, it says a comprehensive worldview is the fundamental cognitive orientation of an individual or society encompassing the entirety of the individual or society's knowledge and point of view. And the second definition is a worldview is a theory of the world used for living in the world. A worldview is a mental model of reality, a framework of ideas and attitudes about the world, ourselves, and life, a comprehensive system of beliefs with answers for a wide range of questions. And that's kind of, I guess when I think of a worldview, I side, or I'm a little more, I find the second one a little more accurate to what I kind of go with when I think of a worldview. Gavagai, tell me, when you think of worldview, what goes on in your head?
I mean, to me, it's like a network of beliefs, and there are some that probably dictate or you know, the kind of core beliefs that help you to arrange and even filter the rest of your beliefs and your perceptions about reality. You know, so maybe somebody believes in ghosts, but that's not necessarily like one of the core beliefs about the world. So I wouldn't say that that was, you know, something that, you know, was the framework for their worldview, but it forms a piece, and you know, you can have, it's really this whole network of different beliefs that as a whole kind of frames your interpretation of the world and your understanding of things. So, you know, maybe on an everyday basis that one belief about the existence of ghosts might not come into play ever, but in certain circumstances, you know, you're, you know, somewhere in the woods, you know, at night, and you hear something, well, now that becomes part of how you interpret sounds or motion that you perceive, or, you know, things that you're unsure about. You know, alone at home in a house at night, and you know, there's a creak, or, you know, the house shifts or settles or something, and all of a sudden that belief, you know, comes into play. You know, a worldview, I think more what we mean by that is something that's central and kind of frames pretty much everything else. So naturalism would be something that I might be more inclined to call a worldview, but it can encompass other things, and you know, and there are certain other elements. So, for example, one person might be a naturalist and hold to a naturalistic worldview, but not consider himself a humanist. And someone else might say, well, humanism is part of my worldview, quote unquote. Tell me if I'm going too far or jumping ahead or something here, but this, I think these, to me, these are kind of important ideas, that there are different elements, and some things can become kind of more central and form a part of a core, or even the entirety of a core. For you know, that person's perspective on reality, essentially.
All right, Turtle, you're up. What do you think about worldviews?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Gavagai just said. I think when you're talking about worldviews, you're talking about a collection of lenses through which you view the world and you interpret the data that you receive about the world. And as Gavagai was kind of saying, some of those lenses are more important than others, but they're all kind of independent in a way, and codependent in some cases. But to say that, you know, for instance, the belief in ghosts or to not believe in ghosts, like that is part of anybody's worldview, but it doesn't, not that much else necessarily rides on that, but it can affect whether or not you believe in ghosts, how you view certain events. So it's worldview is kind of a catch-all term for all of these lenses through which we view things through. So that's kind of the way I think of it.
Skylar, you deal with a lot of wacky Christians or theists online.
I do.
You hear the word worldview quite a bit, I imagine,
I do.
especially because they think you're an atheist half the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they try to put you in that box, right? So, what do you think? Worldviews.
Yeah, I think that term worldview is most often applied to Christians. Like, because, in general, within our daily lives, if you're secular or something non-extremely religious, that word doesn't really exist in general. Yeah, it's very strange to me. Like, they're like, according to your worldview, when we're really just talking usually, at least within the Google Plus community, we're only talking about one specific idea. And most of the time that's religion, specifically most of the time Christianity, and an argument for it or against it, basically. And when we get into like these, presuppositional things where they're like, how can you know anything? Or basically they want to claim knowledge that you can't have knowledge unless somehow God exists. It's just a way for them to have an argument without actually having to deal with their actual scripture or what they believe. It's like a defense mechanism, right? Because if they can just get basically make some kind of extraordinary claim, which is God gives me some kind of knowledge, and in my world, because God gives me this knowledge, I'm able to actually have knowledge, and your worldview, you just have to basically leave it to things that are that could be fallible, which is all human beings. Our brains could malfunction. There could be reasons why we can't know things specifically, and it just gets into silly town, right? It's just like, and same thing with morality. They try to argue, well, you can't talk about morality unless you have our morality, right? But all of that always just comes down to a specific claim on their part that they can't bother to demonstrate, and they can only try to assert and try to hold you to a standard that doesn't even necessarily exist, basically. So with worldviews, it's just a very strange thing to me to be so focused on it. And I guess the bottom line is I think it's really just a defense tactic to avoid actually arguing the merits of what their actual beliefs are.
Yeah, as I was saying on at the beginning of the show, the whole worldview versus worldview thing it's kind of a new phenomenon to me. Kind of like in 2012, it was Precept was the big hot topic of that year, I think, or something along those lines, 2013. But this worldview versus worldview thing, I kind of agree with everybody in a sense. And of course, being last, I have that advantage. I can just say that and sound smart. But
Ooh, good point. Good point.
right? Do you like how that goes? I just set it up, and then you guys knock it out of the park, and then I just come in and go, yep, what you guys said. Next. No, but it seems like a real easy way. The worldview versus worldview argument seems like some sort of convoluted beat stick, right? Like it's a way they can put their opponent or whoever their interlocutor, or whatever, in a box, right? That they can sort of rally against. So it's almost like a really bad straw man in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like when you say that your atheist worldview, they've already put you in this compartment where they have their script to beat against, and when I hear atheist worldview, I kind of laugh at myself, or to myself rather, because your worldview is more than just your atheism, right? It's kind of like the God or not God. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's a way to it's just a weapon. To me, it's just a dishonest debating tactic to me.
Yeah, atheism is a lens through which we view the world, but it doesn't make up the entirety of our worldview.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah. Yeah, what you said. So yeah, I kind of scoff at it almost just as a reaction, but I mean, if given that I kind of take that second definition of a theory of the world, the mental model of reality, that kind of thing, my atheism is just a very small part of that. So, as far as worldviews go, do you think they can be what a lot of theists on Google Plus call incoherent? We get that a lot. If you don't believe in God, your worldview is incoherent or absurd. or contradictory or any one of these terms where if they can get you to a point where you can admit that, let's say, I don't have the, let's say someone doesn't have the philosophical chops that some of us do, right? I don't. All right, I'm a complete noob when it comes to philosophy. Not everyone is Schuyler or Fox
Oh,
or
I'm not
Ozzy.
that good.
I was just seeing if you were paying attention.
Almost. Can I make a point though? I wanted to say something that kind of goes to the first part, what you were saying. And there's a big difference though between like an atheist, a non-believer, like well, let's just say anybody that Christian has an opposing worldview to, right? When they're
Right.
using that argument. And is that you're willing to change your worldview if evidence shows something different, right? They're not. Like they'll say that, oh, if you can just, all you gotta do is just disprove Jesus rose from the dead. It's like, well, how the fuck are you gonna prove that? Like that's such a nonsensical idea, right? And it's improvable. We don't even know if he died on the cross in the first place. Speaking of Easter, so it's like that's a very big point when you talk about, if you want to call it worldview or views on life, is the ability to change one's ideas based on evidence and reason, basically. And a lot of times they're not willing to do it. And you see it by the backwards arguing of them, right? It's why when me or one of you guys debate a Christian and you point out something very, very horrible about their God, and you're like, well, look at God does slavery or whatever kind of evil action X, right? And instead of just being like, ooh, yeah, I don't really think God did that, they have to argue around it. They're like, well, you don't have a ground for morality, so you don't have any right to tell me that God's more immoral. Or there's no way you could know anything. It's like they can't change their minds because they've already come to a couple assumptions, and then there's no way to change these assumptions. So I think that's a good point to make when talking about these worldviews.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to just take the legs out from underneath your argument completely when they do that, rather than arguing the point that's being discussed. They just try to go around that, take the legs out from underneath their opponents altogether.
You know, I find too that when they set up these worldview versus worldview or whatever, they set themselves as the standard, right? Do you ever notice that as soon as they go, well, you can't know anything without X or God or whatever, they're sort of setting themselves up as the standard, right? Unless, you know, how do you know anything without God, or how do you have morality without God, you know? And they put themselves, by just their very verbiage, in this position where you're on the defensive, and it's just a real shitty way to debate people.
Well, and I think we all need to develop tools in our kind of interaction kit, you know, when we're, and I don't even like the word debating, but when we're engaging with believers on these things, and they make these moves, you know, it's almost it's really red herring kind of tactics that they'll use to throw these things out to avoid talking about whatever it was that, you know, probably made them somewhat uncomfortable. And one thing that I have personally been working on, and I'm still not very good at this, and you can look at any of my interactions, especially with, you know, people like Matt Slick or whatever, I fail to point out the fact that they are sliding or shifting the discussion and you know, diverting attention away from the topic that we were talking about to something about me or something about, you know, whatever. Evolution is one that comes up all the time, and really learn to ways to point to that, you know, not in a ha I win kind of way, but in the, you know, the fact of the matter. Well, now you're shifting to a different subject. Are we finished talking about that, and why have we changed? You know, and you know, press the issue in those kinds of terms. And this is even a kind of a deviation from the core of what we're talking about, but I think it's an important point, and it's something that I know personally that I need to brush up on and get better at is you know, redirecting back to the original topic.
You know, it's a great way to show if they have to get away from their argument is if they have to ask you questions in order to prove their point. basically. Like if you ask them to demonstrate something, if you're like, well, demonstrate objective morality or demonstrate why this is immoral, and then they immediately go to asking you a question, there's a problem. Because no matter what your answer is to any of their questions, it is completely irrelevant to proving their case, right? Because what you could be, even if there was some kind of point they were trying to make about you specifically, right? For instance, you brought up Matt Slick with the objective morality debate, and he's trying to get you to admit to some kind of absolute morality. And you say, yeah, it's always wrong. What's the one they always just like, killing a baby for fun or no?
Raping a baby for fun.
Oh, God, yeah, exactly. Something like that, right? And they're like, well, is it always wrong? And then, like, so your initial thing is to be like, oh, yeah, it's fucking disgusting, right? But then what they mean is something so much more complicated, and it's hidden within their sentence, right? Because they're not just saying, hey, it's wrong, like in the sense like you feel it's wrong and you're disgusted by it and things like that. They're saying, like, outside of you in some weird way, that there's some kind of universal law that exists outside of human beings that makes it absolute. And a person, and you did pretty good with a lot of these questions, because I remember when you had that conversation with him, but people who aren't so prepared for those kind of things, and I even got fooled the first time. First time I talked to him, I didn't quite understand what he was asking. It took me a couple times listening to him to really kind of catch the trick within the question. Yeah, that's right, baby. And the thing is when he asks you that question, most people don't understand it. And then when he gets you, like, oh, well, then you believe in a universal principle. Oh, I'm getting away from what I was saying. So anyway, the main point was, right? So say you say yes, right? Because you just say, yeah, it's always wrong. It doesn't make a difference what your opinion is, right? Even if you say yes, it doesn't make it necessarily the case that this morals are objective or absolute. That's just what you think it is, right? Whether your opinion is right or wrong, it doesn't matter. So them asking you a question about morality basically gets them absolutely nowhere, and it's just like a weird debate tactic, basically.
Yeah. Anytime you get into you engage in a believer and they start asking questions in response to this is why Trey Jadlow irritates me to no end, and he seems to think like it's some sort of genius way to talk to people, but my bullshit meter goes to level red immediately when I see that guy speak, because answering questions with questions, and Matt Slick does the same thing, and they seem to think it's this really clever way of exposing your position, but it's just really disingenuous to me.
I mean, there are times when answering a question with a question can be valuable, because sometimes the best way to get somebody to understand your perspective is to have them come to that conclusion themselves. But when it's just this endless barrage of questioning, answering a question with a question just to dodge, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I answer questions with questions a lot of times too, because I like Turtle just said. I think that there's to me, I consider it like a Socratic inquiry, where you are trying to lead the person to certain conclusions that they might not be open to if you just laid it out and said, well, the reason is X, Y, and Z, therefore, D or whatever it is, and points 1, 2, and 3, here you go. When you tell people how it is, rather than having them work through things on their own, that's I think there's value in that, and I think psychology will bear that out, that people become more open to questioning and just thinking through things when they're presented with questions that they have to answer. However, it becomes very kind of a slippery slope from trying to lead people down a path like that and avoiding answering questions yourself, and being willing to pursue that kind of inquiry, for you to examine your own beliefs and your own assumptions or presuppositions and things like that.
Do you really think Trey Jadlow understands the Socratic method?
I don't think he's using it. I mean, I think he's just trying to, as a great example, this talk about events and what's the effects. and just going around in a circle saying, well, did it happen? Does it change? That is clearly not trying to get the other person to think. When he's just going around in this circle, he's changing the word,
Yeah.
and it's just this endless chasing tail. It's just so obnoxious. But
Do you? Sorry, go ahead.
No,
no, that's it.
what is that? God, when I was talking to him one time, he said there's a term he uses for like intrinsic specialness or something. That was the way he defined it. Something value, inherent value, or something like that. And I forgot the word. He kept repeating it over and over. And the specialness of life, or
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I realized after watching it is all I should have said to him was like, no, we create our own value. Baby, you can't chew the cord. It's like we create our own value as human beings, like for things. And at the time, he just kept using this weird term. I'd never heard it, and I'm like, it's a tricky game. It's okay. That he plays, and it's a language game to try to fool. It's just a shady tactic instead of actually just arguing the merits of it, of what you're actually debating.
I'll tell you what the phrase is in a second. It's in my Jadlo bingo.
How many times have you heard Trey Jadlow or speak in a hangout, and you said to yourself, "Wow, he just pulled that right out of his ass, like just made up shit, just right out of his ass, just reached right in, grabbed it, and pulled it out."
He's really good at that, though. It's kind of impressive.
One time he said some kind of phrase when he was talking with Gus. And I went and I was like, I just got to Google this phrase. Let me Google the words by one, and then take the definition of each word and kind of line it up, basically, to kind of understand what. And it was so nonsensical. It didn't mean anything at all, basically. It's like word salad. And I'm like, what? He's
like so confident when he says it too that it just like you're like, is that a real thing? Just the way he says it.
Do you know what it's like? Do you know what we should do? Skylar, are you familiar with the Wisdom of Chopra website?
No, I know who the guy is. Is it Deepak?
I think
Deepak Chopra, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I'll say, so what? A guy actually turned me on to this. So he's one of those. He speaks in a lot of like that spiritual word salad, and this guy created like this sort of I don't know, algorithm, whatever, and it basically it jumbles a bunch of like cool sounding words and puts them together and makes it sound like something almost believable that he would say. Kind of like what you were just saying. You know what I mean? Kind of like that may fit more in the woo-woo section of this hangout, but Trey is very much the same way. You can almost just mix up the words Trey says and put them together, you know, and it still equals the same nonsense. You know, it's just nonsense. So, given that we're talking about worldviews, have any of you had a situation where you were told your worldview has failed, or your worldview fails?
Yes.
By what situation and by whom?
My 7th grade math teacher. No.
What?
You got that answer wrong in geometry. Your worldview fails. No. Yeah, I've been told there's a really super obnoxious guy. What is his name? Oh, I can't stand dealing with him. He's like one of the only people I have ever blocked.
He's your arcane logos.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, fuck arcane logos. I almost forgot. I always forget it in the intro.
So, but anyways, this guy, he's a presuppositionalist guy, and his favorite thing is where does logic come from, and you know, it's got to come from the mind of God kind of deal, and so that's his game, and if I can't explain where logic comes from, my entire worldview fails. So
right.
So
That's why I like being a deist sometimes, because I just shut this whole goddamn argument down for them. Because there's nothing because I'll just literally regurgitate whatever they say. If they're like, well, you know, my God makes it possible for logic. Okay, so does mine. Next. Like, what
you did that with Bible Thumping Wingnut when you were on that show. You're like, how many times did you go, I'm a deist, man, I believe in God?
It's
They're like,
Script must refute, must refute,
He
don't
did that
know.
a couple of times, and then they would fall back on the same responses they would give to other atheists, and you're like, yeah, but I believe in God, so now what?
Let's actually address the issues instead of you trying to scapegoat into something else.
Right.
It's fucking hilarious. And
You could,
go ahead. Yeah.
I would say you could almost see the expression on the wingnut's face when he just shits his pants when he can't like follow the script, you know? Like
Oh, so
it's so obvious.
he's blocked me on everything now. Like he's
Oh,
literally
really?
blocked me from Facebook, from everything, Google Plus, YouTube, for no reason. Like I didn't troll him, I didn't do anything really wrong. I didn't like curse at him or make fun of him or anything. He got mad. I wouldn't. He was asking some kind of ridiculous question. It was just like the killing babies for fun kind of question. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And I just kept pointing out how the sentence didn't make sense within like a subjective worldview.
That's a
And
fun question.
and he blocked me, completely blocked me from everything, over nothing. And that time, that the time you're talking about where he actually came on my show, I'm amazed he came on my show where he didn't have mod controls. But he was so depressed after that we went off air. Like I could see it in his face. Like he was like, oh man. He's like, I didn't do well. He literally straight up said it to me.
Who was that?
This is Bible thumping wingnut.
Oh.
When he came on mine, because he said all kinds of crazy shit. He's like, yeah, God hates children. All children deserve hell. Like he literally like said these such extreme things, and I'm like, please don't stop. Just keep saying shit. You're gonna make my show even popular, please. And I'm like, I can't even believe you said all this stuff. But afterwards, he's like, yeah. He's like, man, I really just I didn't do well. I almost felt bad for the guy because I'm like having like a kind of a talk to talk, like just like a gentleman to gentleman kind of conversation. I'm like, oh no, you didn't do that bad. I'm trying to make him feel better about it. But it's their own fault for saying such crazy shit, right? Like why would you be? Look at the episode with slavery they did the other week. They put it a big picture, how to beat your slave as the title of their video. Like, what do you think this is going to get you? I don't know if you're doing it for shock value, but it doesn't work when you're arguing for it, right? Like, it works for me when I'm making fun of somebody because it's hilarious if I'm like, how to argue child slavery is moral, right? Because it's irony. For them, it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot, basically.
They don't get the joke. It's funny. No offense to you guys, but when you get a group of middle-aged white guys together, promoting slavery is probably not the best way to go about doing things. That's all I'm saying. It just may not go over well.
And let's get a special guest who's like an expert on slavery.
Right.
It's not that kind of slavery. It's a good kind of slavery, you know?
Slavery.
It's
Nice slavery.
it's nice stuff. It's fucking hilarious. Sorry.
Yeah,
To get back to the one question you have on your list here, Heathen.
Yes.
Oops, I just accidentally minimized that. Can a worldview be incoherent if one thing in the worldview is incoherent? I would say that depends on how important that one thing is to the worldview. So, for instance, if part of my worldview is that aliens are abducting people, if that turns out to be incoherent, then that doesn't necessarily mean that my entire worldview is incoherent. But if, for instance, if I believe that I am in the Matrix right now and somehow it is demonstrated to me that that belief is incoherent, then I would say that would make pretty much my entire worldview incoherent. So I think it depends on how critical that component of your worldview is.
Well, I would agree. But
not to be nitpicky, but
yeah.
I think you could believe that you're in the Matrix and be wrong about that, but it's still a coherent,
right?
Logically coherent.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Okay. I jumped on your.
No. You said it better, so it's all good.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, but I'm saying if it turned out that that belief was incoherent, like because that would be such a large part of my worldview, because literally everything that I believe about the world flows from that belief.
Right, but the reality you experience is still it still forms whatever worldview. Now the reality may not be real, but that doesn't mean your worldview within that reality of experience is not real or incoherent. Does that make sense, Gabby?
Yeah, I mean,
Like
to me,
everybody in the
I think my problem is just the use of the term incoherent there. I mean, like let's say you did believe that you were living in the Matrix, and you were like what's the name of the Judas character in the movie The Matrix, the guy that like turns over
Yeah, I can't think of it.
Morpheus, whatever his name is. Anyways,
Yeah.
but he gets reinserted because that's where he wants to be. Let's say you were groovy with this artifice of reality that you're experiencing, and every part of your life was indistinguishable from any other person who just thought that they were experiencing the real world. But you just have this that this is a facade, and there's nothing to it, but you're living your life like everything else. But let's say instead of that, though, there's another person who's believes that they're in the Matrix, and their whole life is trying to find Morpheus or something like that, and that's the focus of their entire world, and eventually they come to the conclusion, well, man, there's no real Morpheus. Maybe I'm not in the Matrix. I surely I would have found him by now. In the deep net or something. I don't know where you would look for Morpheus, but your worldview could come crashing down around you at a moment like that, where you kind of have this epiphany that what you've been believing is not accurate.
Yeah, but they would have a demonstration of that incoherence. And the problem that I have is when you get these situations where you're engaging theists and they say you're a non-believer, and Skylar, you don't fall into this situation, but you're a non-believer, so your worldview is incoherent, just out of the gate.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that I don't think it's wrong to suggest that there is a possibility. To be honest, I think it's the opposite situation where, because atheism for me is merely a lens through which I view reality. It doesn't make up that much of my worldview. But I think the opposite is true when you flip the script, because I think, like, when I was a Christian and I lost that belief, that was a giant chunk of my worldview that got changed, because I beforehand believed that God was this major player in everything that happened, and that suddenly got taken out of my life, and that was a large chunk of my worldview. Whereas atheism it's not the same. It's not a one-for-one chunk of the worldview as theism was for me. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and if I came to, let's say I came to believe that there was a creator God, but that it wasn't necessarily, it was a deist God, that would not rock my world. I would probably continue on much the way I do now. I would just believe one additional thing is different. Yeah.
But it's funny you were saying about the Matrix thing and all that. But if you think about like the world as like a framework of like kind of like the second definition, a theory of the world, a mental model of reality, this and that. Even the character from the Matrix that knows it's the Matrix, all that happened was that his worldview changed to encompass knowledge of the real world and the Matrix. It doesn't mean his worldview is incoherent or fails, right? Doesn't it just add to or modify what his existing model of reality was?
Well, so like a good example of like an incoherent world would be something like, in my worldview, I don't believe brains exist. Like that would be like, could that be an example of an incoherent worldview, because you have to have a brain to even, I guess, be able to concept or think or any of these kind of things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, It's tough. It's tough to think of an incoherent worldview that
Yeah.
anyone would actually have. Um, and again, to Heathen's point, my view is what I was kind of bringing up was actually kind of the opposite, where you are in the real world and you think it's the Matrix, and you are, let's just say somehow, let's assume it's possible to demonstrate that that belief is incoherent. I'm not saying that is actually possible to demonstrate that, but if it were possible to demonstrate that that belief was incoherent, the fact that the belief that the real world is actually a matrix is such a powerful lens. It's such an important belief within that worldview that I think that would make that basically the whole worldview incoherent.
I would just be satisfied if I had a worldview or a model of reality where Keanu Reeves was a good actor. I think that would.
That you have an incoherent
That's an
worldview, my
incoherent
friend.
worldview.
He's not so bad. He's made some. Huh?
Have you seen that movie Knock Knock?
No.
Okay, go watch Knock Knock, and then when you come back next week, tell me. But if everyone's seen John Wick, right?
Seen what?
I've seen parts of it. I haven't got a chance to really watch it. I heard it's amazing.
Really good movie for him because he doesn't speak that much and he's not required any sort of emotional range. But in Knock Knock, it's almost comical.
What
My
about
dog
Point Break? He was awesome in Point Break. Remember that?
Oh well, he was also good in Bill and Ted, but that's because he really is Bill. There isn't a stretch. He really is that guy.
I'm going to give you that one. He
just needs to be cast correctly. That's all.
Everybody goes back to Point Break with Keanu Reeves. I've heard that it's like, yeah, he was great in Point Break. All right. But the old saying goes,
Speed wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad of a movie.
No.
Yeah, it was.
They're on a bus. There's excitement. I mean, we got who was it? Dennis Hopper in that movie? Who was the bad guy in that film?
Right, but he didn't carry that movie though. Hopper and Bullock carried that movie.
Yeah, she did.
So, she was easy enough a distraction for me at the time. So, but she's what we call in the movie industry. Not that I'm in the movie industry. She's what we call almost hot. Just missed hot. Anyway, here comes the hate mail. So, all right. So if we exhausted all the worldview stuff, anyone have any more last thoughts on the worldview stuff before we move on to the woo-woo?
Did we answer the questions?
We answered all the questions. We jumped around kind of. I had, is atheism and theism a worldview? And I think we kind of answered that indirectly through conversation.
Yeah.
I think they're chunks of worldviews.
Right. I would think there are parts of worldviews, not worldviews themselves. And then why do some theists seek to compare worldviews, such as pre-suppers or guys like Trey Jadlow? And I think we kind of talked about that at the half-hour mark.
I think theism can be a world like more of a worldview, depending on how involved you think God is in the world. Like if you think God is making gravity happen in like very specifically, or if God has really got his fingers all over reality, then I think your worldview becomes more linked to this theistic belief.
Yeah, and I think we would all agree that atheism and even deism does not comprise a worldview. It's a piece of a worldview, and you have to have many other different pieces to kind of frame your interpretation of the world and your experiences.
Well, we have a deist in the room. Let's ask him.
No, I agree with that. I don't really think deism. I mean, it's such a basic belief that it really doesn't really affect much of my worldview. I think there's some positive aspects that are less deist in some of my views. I think actually now reading the list of this next topic, it might go into a little bit more in detail that come up. But deism in general, no, it doesn't really plays nothing.
I was poking around with the idea of doing doing like a heretical interview, like a sub interview. I would love to interview you one day
Yeah,
and
it's
just
fine, absolutely.
pick your brain. I can't
Uh,
guarantee it'll be all on topic, but you seem like I just want to go. Why? How in my head, Skylar
I love it.
Skylar is like, you know, when a Dark Lord of the Sith looks at a Jedi and goes, he would make a great Sith Lord. Like Skylar would make a great atheist. Just I'm waiting for the day, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so on to the New Age, which is our second topic for the second hour, if we go that long. So I don't know how big the New Age or spirituality kind of I don't want to call it a movement, but beliefs or groups or whatever, how well they or how much they permeate your life. I imagine based on locations, it's going to be a little different. I imagine where Gavagai lives, they've already killed them all or ran them out. Where I live on the West Coast in California, this stuff is very, 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 very prevalent. You know, I live, you know, essentially in the Los Angeles area. I spend a lot of time in Hollywood, and you know, all the stereotypes are pretty accurate when it comes to that sort of thing. There's a lot of hipsters with no shoes and jeans on the beach playing acoustic guitars, wearing fedoras, and meditating. That is pretty accurate. That kind of thing. So as far as New Age goes, I kind of got some definition. It says a broad movement characterized by alternative approaches to traditional Western culture, with an interest in spirituality, mysticism, holism, and environmentalism. And spirituality, which is a word I hear a lot of, is a broad concept with room for many perspectives. In general, it includes a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves, and it typically involves a search for meaning in life. As such, it is a universal human experience, something that touches us all. So I'd like to go down the panel and kind of pick your brains. Where are you guys at with the New Age stuff? Does it affect you guys? Is it a lot? Do you see a lot of it where you're at, or what do you see specifically? That kind of thing. Just kind of a general, impression. Anybody? Turtle, you're not muted, so you go first. Oh, sorry, Skylar, you want to?
It's up to you. It doesn't matter, Turtle. If you have something.
I don't really have that much to say, so I'll just go quick. Here where I live in Wisconsin, there is very little to none. If you do see it at all, it's usually in the 20-somethings crowd, I would say. But I don't run into any of this really in my day-to-day life. You know, every once in a while I'll see something online, but that's about it. I don't have any interactions with anybody that I know of who is involved in any kind of New Age stuff. So I can be pretty brief.
Well, this is maybe a short conversation then. Go ahead, Skylar.
Yeah, so I actually find this kind of stuff very, very interesting, right? It's kind of like it's kind of like tabloids in a sense. When you it's like looking at a car accident. So an interesting story is like when I first got out of Christianity, right? One of the things that got me out of Christianity was a book by I don't know if you guys are familiar with this guy, Neil Donald Walsh, and he wrote the Conversation with God books. Has anybody read those books? They were real popular in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, basically.
No.
I don't read. I have the internet.
This is before we really had this thing, the internet, everywhere. Anyway.
Your YouTube version? 5-minute video?
Yeah, I don't. So basically what happened was Neil Donald Walsh claimed that he had started, basically he was homeless, things weren't going well for him, and he really wasn't religious, and he started writing a book, and he felt like God was writing through him, right, in these books. So they're the books are kind of like a conversation with God, like as if they're him talking to God back and forth, right? And it's super New Agey, like new concepts, things I had never heard of before, right? Completely different from Christianity. And it was so interesting to me. It's an interesting read no matter what. I think it's total BS now, now I'm older and I kind of really understand, some of this stuff. But what was interesting about it is it was the first time I had really got to hear something that was completely different from Christianity, right? Something that took some of these horrible aspects that I'd always been kind of bothered by and was like, why do you think God would be like this? Do you think God really would make a place called hell? Do you think this God that loves you would really, do these horrible things? Do you think that's really what he's about? And, and it was just so fascinating and interesting to me. And it goes into all kinds of topics. I mean, from spirituality to why we're here. I mean, he wrote like 7 books under this thing. These like 7 Conversation with God books. Started like a little New Age movement and things like that. But I would say in general, I like Alan Watts. I talk about it all the time. Alan Watts is a big philosopher from the 70s and 60s. Hey, I heard you. I love Alan Watts, big philosopher from the 70s and 60s. He's got a lot of New Age beliefs. I mean, they're based on some Buddhism, a lot of it. But some of this stuff's very, very interesting. And I think at least with this kind of stuff, it can be not necessarily all true by any means. There's no way to prove a lot of these kind of things. But at least they're interesting to read about, right? And they're concepts that are a lot more positive, right? For instance, and I hope I'm not going on too long here, like Alan Watts has this great thing where he talks about there's always this idea that we come into this world, right? But he thinks that's like a wrong idea to think about. Like really what it is we come out of this world, right? We're more like an apple to an apple tree on planet Earth. Oh my goodness. You don't want me to talk about Alan Watts. I heard you.
That's baby for spirituality's bullshit.
Yeah, apparently she's an atheist already. But like that kind of concept, like such an interesting thing, right? Like to think if you think about all this regular science, evolution, the formation of our universe, the solar system, the formation of our planet, us evolving to the point we are, and here we are, basically, right? Talking on the internet, right? We came out of this planet more like an apple out of an apple tree than coming into it. Like we just didn't poof magically get here all of a sudden. Oh, I know, I'm entertaining. And it's I think that kind of stuff's very fascinating. I'll let you guys speak for a second so I can. This baby's she's just laughing and smiling. She's not mad. She's just being hilarious.
This show was entertaining. Damn it! I told you. She loves it. We have one fan. Go ahead, Gabby.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of dealings with any kind of supernatural. I mean, New Agey kind of stuff. There were a few like classmates that I knew in high school who were into like astrology and just some, I don't know, some different stuff like that. And in Arkansas, where I live now, there's really very little. But I have run into a few people. There was a coworker of mine who tried to do my name and birthday stuff for numerology and was like, oh, you're this kind of person because of when you were born, and like converting the letters in your name to numbers, I think was what she did. And I was like, uh-huh. But apart from that, it's definitely not pervasive in the culture here, and it's frowned upon by the vast majority of the people who tend to be pretty conservative Christians overall. So
the hell you say.
Yeah.
So I guess allow me to divulge a little bit of personal information here. So as the guys know, I had recently broke up with my girlfriend a long time. And one of the reasons that she would say there was a problem, and not from my perspective per se, but more from hers, was the differences in our beliefs. Right? She has them, I don't, essentially. So there's a list that I gave you guys, right? I'm going to read through them real fast. Psychics, faith healing, alternative medicine, chakras, holistic medicine, homeopathy, numerology, paranormal stuff, reincarnation, past lives, extrasensory perception, which falls under psychic, astrology, and crystals. And she pretty much was into all of it.
Really?
Right. So the reason being, and this is just my, just from being with her for so many years, is that she was raised a Christian essentially, and it was very, at one point it got kind of strict because they got into a very strict sort of denomination. But in their family, they're kind of in general, at least on the West Coast or Los Angeles area, if you have any sort of like skeptic lens on, or you just kind of require a little more, you're branded closed-minded almost immediately, right? So you have to go, for you to be considered like this open-minded person, you have to be able to accept everything out of hand. Oh, and I swear that was an exaggeration, right? So if somebody says, if you have, let's say you're stressing out, and someone says like, oh, your first chakra is out of play, if you kind of go, yeah, they go, well, you're just being closed-minded, and you're just like, well, okay. So it becomes an issue because I've, by proxy, learned a little about this stuff. There's a very famous supermarket chain out here called Mother's, and I'm not sure if you guys have that where you guys are at. But there's a Mother's Market, and they do a small part of it is food, but a large part of it is alternative medicines, right? So they don't sell aspirin; they'll sell like, there's 40 different types of like, roots that are crushed into pills, that'll help you. But it's not like you can go spend $8 or $10 on aspirin or whatever, $6, whatever. These things are like $40 a bottle. So, the cheapest one you'll get will be like $18.99, and it'll be like peppermint root or something, like that kind of thing. So out here, it's also big business as well. And it goes a long way to put, some strain on things. I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I'm half Spanish, and so in my experience, a lot of old Spanish ladies think they're psychic for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know. It's like the women in my family are like that. The women in my ex-girlfriend's family are like that. They believe they have some sort of psychic link to their siblings, or their or their kin, or their daughters or sons. Sometimes they believe that is brought on, depending how religious they are, they'll say, I can feel it because of God or something. But it's very common out here. People will sleep with crystals and rocks under their pillows because they believe it gives them, like, there's energy in the crystals, right? And I remember quite distinctly being in a place buying a crystal for my ex-girlfriend, and I made the comment, I'm like, we can go to Carlsbad Caverns and buy all these rocks for like half the price. You know what I mean? And they looked at me like I'm the asshole, but they're the one charging $30 for a little rock. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, well, shit, who's the asshole now? But the homeopathy, all that is really big business on the West Coast, especially in California, the more liberal parts of the country. I think I told you guys that story about the past lives. I think it was out of off air. I don't know if you guys remember, but
doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, well, we were the place where I bought the crystal for my ex-girlfriend. The girl that works there asked her if she had a past lives reading, and she was a young girl, probably like 20, and I think her parents owned the store, and she was like, you have to do it. My girlfriend's like, oh my god, I haven't done that yet. I've always wanted to, this and that. And the girl's like, yeah, I did it, and my ancestor was the head priestess in the Mayan civilization, and not just like a high-ranking priestess, but like the top one.
Nice.
Yeah, right. And I kind of paused and I said, have you ever noticed that when someone gets a past lives reading, like, their ancestors always have someone of great importance?
I think I remember you talking about this
right?
now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They're always kings, and high priestesses, or they're always at something great, right? Yeah. Like, no one's like a farmer, or no one's like, like that kind of thing.
Your great-grandfather was a homeless person.
Right, exactly. And they looked at me like I'm the asshole, and I'm just like, well, I mean, don't you guys stop and just think about it for a second? Like, every past lives reading you've ever heard, everybody has, the person has always been of great importance, and no one ever stops and says, well, wait a minute, how is everybody always important, right?
Well, they skipped the boring ones. So she was, a farmer at one point, and
they skipped the boring ones.
like a miner at one point, and so then she just went right to the most exciting one.
Now keep in mind, I'm at a store. Okay, now they had in the first part of the store had all the crystal stuff. The back store had candles, and these candles look exactly like the Catholic candles that you see, in like any store, and except they slap a different label on it, and there's pretty little crystals and shiny things in them. And it's like, you light this for your birthday or for the new year, and you do your whatever your meditation is, and like it's supposed to do something. And these candles are like $10 a pop. Now, if I go to the Hispanic market down the road, the Catholic candles are all 99 cents. Doesn't matter what label you put on it, they're all 99 cents, even the blank ones. But apparently they're all made by the lady that owns the place, and there's magic in the candles, I suppose. Now, if you go in the little room to the left, they have actual spell books. Like, there is a calendar on the wall. Like, when you go into a college and you see, like, the curriculum, right? Like, there's a calendar, it has all the classes listed.
Yeah.
There's actually sorcery classes. And if you read the description, it's like, the basics of sorcery, how to channel symbols, like advanced spell casting, like it's like Hogwarts. And right, you laugh, but there's books there. It looks like, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with like the Evil Dead, but there's books that look like the Necronomicon, like they're leather bound, like they have all like these intricate designs on them. And if you open the pages, they're made of parchment. They're not made of like paper or construction paper. And they're different varying sizes and this like that, and that's the same that has all the tarot stuff. But this is what I mean. Like where I live, this stuff is, it's all over the place, and so it does create a bit of a rift between her and I. And to me, I'm the kind of person that's like, like I went to a sort of yoga retreat, and forgive me if I'm going along here, but and it was a large group. They rented out this like space in like some dude's backyard or something, like this vacant grass lot, and there was like, I did a guided meditation, which I've never done before, right? And they right, yeah, you guys are already laughing. And so we're in this room, and there's this really bitchin' kind of like really mellow music. It's like, someone's playing like a sitar or something, like ding ding, like kind of thing, and you're supposed to stare, like your right eye is supposed to stare into his right eye, and he stares at you essentially, and you stare at him essentially, and it's supposed to open like your mind, and you're supposed to go on this like journey. And everyone else went before me, and they're like, I was staring at you, and your face kind of molded into a cat, and your face kind of shifted into colors and this and that. And to me, I'm like, I just stared at a guy for like, 10 minutes, and basically nothing happened, right? And of course, his reasoning is, he told my now ex-girlfriend, he goes, well, you're just farther along than he is. Like, your mind is more open than he is, so you'll be able to receive energy easier. Like, I guess, like she has a carpool lane, like, for her psychic energy or something.
And you're stuck in traffic.
Right. My freeway has traffic. My pipes are clogged, apparently. But it's not like I didn't go and like, try it. I went with all right, whatever. Let's do this and see what happens, And there's a lot of that stuff. There was a lady that gave a speech on how fluoride is like killing everybody because it has mercury in it, and I don't think she quite understands how the chemistry of it works. But there's a lot of that. It's a lot of anti-big pharma stuff. Really, really the push for homeopathy and holistic medicines, and a lot of meditation stuff, but it's very, very big out here on the West Coast, and so it's kind of interesting. You guys haven't done any of that stuff, right, at all? Been exposed to any of that?
I kind of an interesting thing here near where I live here in Florida. We have a town called Casadega. And Casadega is a psychic town, basically. So they do psychic training camps. It's really crazy. You'd never even know this thing exists, right?
I would so go there.
Oh, it's amazing. And I'll tell you a really interesting story that you might think is complete bullshit, but I don't even know what to think of it because it's this interesting, right? So long ago, before I was married, we a lot of times we'd go as friends, we'd group people and go up there and all get our fortunes read and things like that. But I went on a date with some girls, like a big group date. We all had dates. We all decided to go up there, and we go in, and they'll actually literally used to record the conversation for you to keep the tape and things so you can hear it. And one of the things I was like, well, listen, you don't need to, if you're a psychic, don't use the tarot cards. We don't really need these. She's like, oh, okay, we don't. She's like, I don't. These are kind of useless. She kind of basically even told me. She's like, all I need to do is just touch something you have, basically. And I'm like, okay. And she just took my watch off at the time, and she starts rubbing it, and she's literally starts talking about like my future wife. She's talking about how I'm going to meet her very, very soon. And this is like always classic stuff. Oh, you're going to meet this person, or you're going to get a new job, things like that, right? But then she starts getting in like detail about things, and she says, well, listen, you're going to be in a very loud place soon. And she's like, and I see a major height difference, like a really big height difference. And she starts talking about her being very dark, right? But not almost to the point where she doesn't want to say black, but she's but she's saying dark. Now keep in mind, I'm on a date with some girl here, like at this thing, right? So
Awkward.
it is weird. So it's weird, and but a couple months later, now I don't know if you guys noticed, my wife is black. Okay, first of
I
all,
had not known that.
yeah, my wife is black. She's also 6'3" foot tall. Now I was not dating my wife, didn't know my wife, nothing like that before this, and the place we met was a very noisy place, and the other part of the noise is that we were both dating different people, not in a relationship, but we were seeing different people, right? And the guy she was talking to was there with her the first time I met her. So and this psychic kept telling me how I'm going to want to get her away from there, like move her away so we can talk. And that's exactly what I wanted because she's with this guy's here. And it was weird. There was a bunch of stuff she said. It wasn't even just this. Like she brought up stuff about how I'm going to be leaving my job within the next month, which I was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not leaving my job in the next month. I got fired from my job that month and ended up getting another job the next month. It was very weird. And there were all these little details that she had brought up. Now, I can't explain it, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I was gullible. Maybe these were just things that could be very open. But the specificness of things like saying the big height difference, and then her talking about skin color, like almost like literally saying it's she's like her complexion is very dark, but I don't like trying to avoid saying black almost to me. And I had never dated a black chick before then, right? And there was something else she had talked about. Now, and here's the bigger. So there were a couple of details, and I can't remember them now. I think there might have been something about me going somewhere and someone dying, or this was the other weird thing. So my grandfather had passed earlier in the year, and she's like, your grandfather's here, and I'm like, okay, yeah, fuck you, right? Like he's not here in the room, right? And she's like, and I was, I've always been a big guy, and I just started losing weight. And she's like, your grandfather says, and she starts doing this, like a motion like this, to keep doing this. Now, I had, for the last 4 months, had been doing like a treadmill like this, literally like this. She's like, and he's saying to keep it up, right? And then she's like, he keeps coughing. I keep hearing this. My grandfather used to fucking cough like this because he was a smoker for like so long. Like, now I didn't fucking give them anything. Like I didn't even tell her my grandfather was dead, right? Like she just was balls to the wall. Was like, yeah, I can see your grandfather here. And all of these things within one setting, and it blew my fucking mind. I was like, how the fuck does she know this? Like, know some of these things. Now, some of this stuff can be kind of like written off, like, hey, saying I'm gonna meet some girl, there could be a height difference and stuff like that. But the stuff she said about my grandfather and the way she reacted about my grandfather and the way like his sense of humor and stuff like that was very strange. I to this day I cannot explain it. Don't know what it is or anything like that. Could be complete BS, obviously, but it's an interesting thing in this town. They're no bullshit like this town. Like they're not the kind of people that are using like crystals and things like that. Like they're literally like they'll just grab an object of yours and be like, okay, this is this. I mean, obviously, probably not every psychic in town could be that good if you even want to say psychics are real. But it was a very interesting encounter, and some of the stuff I didn't even, some stuff seemed realistic, like my grandfather right away. But the other stuff, I was like, oh, this is never going to come true. And then, literally, the detailed stories that she had brought up happened. But anyways,
How tall are you?
whatever. I'm 6 foot.
Oh,
and
okay.
my wife is like 6'3", 6'4", basically.
So when you met your wife, did
Yeah.
that encounter with the psychic go through your mind?
Not at first. Like, I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you. It wasn't until like a while later I found the audio tape. And she had like a cassette tape she had recorded. But because I had completely forgot about it by this point.
Where did you meet her? In the loud place?
It was in like this bar. I had talked online originally with her through not Facebook, through believe it or not, MySpace back in the day. And I had messaged her, and I was like, hey, she's like, well, why don't you come out and meet me? You know, we're gonna be at this it's called Backstage Billiards, is the place, this bar. And I was like, hey, well, you know, that's cool. I'll just go out and meet you. You know, she didn't tell me she was bringing a date, like a guy she was dating or anything like that. But I had to go get I just literally sat there and drank like 2 pitchers of beer before I went up and talked to her. I was so nervous.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did because everything worked out.
Where's that tape?
Oh, I don't even know. I gotta see, like,
Where's that tape?
this is like how many years? I've been married for like almost, I've been dating her for like 10. So this tape would be like pre that. It would be like 11 years old. I wish I had it.
Is anybody else surprised that Skylar's married to a black woman? I mean, my mind is blown just from that. Like when you said met in a loud place, I imagined like a nightclub or something, and then I'm like, was Skylar dancing? Like, and then I had imagined Skylar dancing, and that was weird. And
Oh, dude, I was you wouldn't believe in my 20s, man. I was hip, man. I was I used to go to the club and like I used to dress like Common, you know, the rapper Common. When I was in my 20s, I used to have that. I gotta find a picture one time and show you because you would think it's hilarious. Come on, baby.
This is the kind of stuff that I would love to do in that interview. Just kind of get you know what I mean? Like, really get to know the person behind, like, you know, like the screen there. But yeah, I had a similar experience in some weird way. Back in the day, I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub, and I was working door this particular night. And I don't know if I remember it was a New Year's Eve night or something, but I was on door watching the patio as people left. And and she was, you know, buzz. She came out, this middle-aged lady, but she was kind of hot. But she goes, I'm going to read your palm, or whatever. I'm a psychic. And I'm like, yeah, okay, drunk chick. Have at it, you know. And so she read, like, my palm or whatever, and she's like, and she got a couple of things real. It kind of like Skylar, not as detailed, but you know, she's like, you're gonna travel somewhere next month, and you're gonna it's gonna be out of state, you know, and you're gonna visit family. And I had planned a trip like the next month to go visit my parents who live in Nevada, and just stuff like, you know, the person you know what I mean, like the person you're with now is not the person you guys are gonna probably not be together, you know, this during time, and then, you know, we ended up breaking up and this and that. It's not quite as detailed as Skylar's, but I'm just kind of like, you kind of go, huh, I can't explain that, right? But I don't know if I would necessarily jump to the, you know, saying that psychics are real, but if it is the case that people had, like, superpowers, it'd have to be so super rare, you know? Like, the people that I'm around, they think they're the fucking X-Men. You know what I mean? Like everybody has telepathy, everybody has empathy, everybody can reach others, you know, like, everybody has powers. We went to the... Oh, I'm sorry, empathy. What's the word I'm thinking of?
People and their empathy.
No.
Telepathy.
That's what I'm thinking of. I went to this place called, well, I won't say the name of the place, but it's basically a house where a bunch of people live in LA, and they had like a divorce ceremony where these couple that have been together for a long time are splitting, and there's a ceremony, right? And it's literally a bunch of chicks. And they have fucking armpit hair and the whole thing, right? You walk in and you just reeks of BO. I'm not even joking, right? So they had to they have to light a candle, right, and like just, you know, to clear the air and stuff. And there was a band and stuff. And the band was actually pretty good, but we're walking in, and one of the girls that kind of, you know, checks you in, because you gotta like kind of through Facebook, like RSVP or whatever. You go in, and she's wearing like a little eye necklace thing, and my ex-girlfriend goes, "Oh, I like that necklace. That's really pretty." And the girl, she touched it. She goes, "Yeah, that's how I intuit things." And in my head, I'm like, what? Like, in my head, I'm like vomiting in my mouth. I'm like, oh, you freaking crazy chick, you know? And I'm like, and everybody, there's a lot who have, to me, everybody on some level wants to feel special, right? Who doesn't, as part of the human condition, want to feel loved, special, accepted, this and that? And to me, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of reading into things, and wanting to feel like you're something more than what you are, especially if you don't really feel that way, or you're not that way in the real world,
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is I think as humans we try to see patterns anywhere we can. I mean, that's part of our evolution, and so um, when you do homeopathy or whatever, and it doesn't anything that doesn't really have an effect, but you get the sense that it has an effect, you just create these patterns in your mind that, oh, this works, this does the thing that it's supposed to do, when in reality it's not.
That's why placebos work, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and another thing, even when you don't realize that you are giving cues to some of these people that do cold readings and the psychics, they're really good at picking up, and they'll drop a little thing, and if they see some visual
Reaction.
cue from you,
That's a
or
good point,
they kind of throw a number of things out trying to test the waters, and if they hit success, then they'll go down that path and try and find something else that, maybe there's a guy, maybe it's maybe he's big, well, and they will find something, and our natural instinct is, well, okay, now I can make these connections, and if you kind of look and look quizzical about it, like, oh, that's, I'm not sure that I can find somebody that fits that description, you'll cue to something else, or they'll change, they'll shift. And that's how they work. They're really, really skilled and adept, and they do it in a way that's very subtle and whatever. But what's his name? Matt Dillahunty is really pretty good about doing these things, and has done, even demonstrations of sleight of hand kind of tricks and mind tricks, that where he will lead somebody to an answer or whatever. So there's an art to it, but it doesn't have to have a supernatural explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes too, when they say something, it feel like if it's correct, it can feel very specific. But like, I think of your example, Heathen, like talking about going on a trip to see family. I mean, that is something that a lot of people do all the time, and
Right.
but it happened to match up with you in that case, so it feels more specific than it really is.
Yeah, for sure. No,
There's
I get it.
No, I think you guys make some good points, and I think too, it's kind of like, it's like the analogy of, like, I don't know if you ever heard a statistic that most people die within, like, in a car, when they get in a car accident, within like 10 miles of their home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, because most of the times when you're driving, it's only within about 10 miles of your home.
Right.
Like, most people don't drive that far. Like, there are things that are naturally going to occur within things that it seem kind of phenomenal. Like, they're like, oh, wow, that's a really interesting statistic. But then when you think about it, do you really travel that far away from your house? Or within 25 miles of your home? Most people don't don't drive more than 25 miles. It's just an interesting thing. That's right.
Yeah, but no, I think you're exactly right. I think that's a very good point.
Well, and and two resources that I think are great demonstrations of this. There's a video by what's his name? The Amazing Randy.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Randy, yeah.
Yeah, and he does a whole kind of debunking of the skeptic, and she comes out and does a reading or whatever, and like 50% of the audience thought that she was talking specifically about them, and when she did this reading, and I forget like how many things that they maybe I was disappointed because I forget what it was, but he like numbered how many things that she got wrong about this specific person that she was trying to read, and and details. But the person that was having the psychic read them was thinking she was like 90% on when she was really like 50% off, and only hit half the time. But she would hammer away at those, anything that she was successful at pinpointing, and she could pick up on the person's positive reaction.
Yeah, it's really a pretty intricate skill. I wonder if there's like some sort of TED Talk on it or something. Because
Go ahead.
I was saying there was one on this master pickpocket that did a sleight of hand demonstration where he basically changed his shirt in front of the audience. And it's a really good one. But there's got to be one on cold reading or something like that where even if your pupils widen or something, where there's some sort of physical cue. I would love to know more about that, because that's a really good, and not a good skill per se, but a really difficult skill to master. I would say.
Yeah, there's a show. Go ahead.
There's and maybe this is what you were about to bring up, but there's James Randi video on YouTube, and I'm blanking on the name of. There's a certain set of statements, and there's a specific name for them, and I can't think what they're called. And I just tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. But and there's a video of James Randi, and he's in a classroom with a whole bunch of like high school students, and he just makes these, or I forget what it is. What he does is he doesn't make the statements. He hands out all these I think envelopes with these students' names on them, and then they have all these statements within the envelope. So there's a piece of paper in there, and it has all the, I think, like something like 10 statements. And these 10 statements are supposed to have been produced by a psychic very specifically for these students. And all the students open up their envelopes, and then what they're supposed to do is go through and see how closely they feel these statements feel for themselves. And so they rate them, and I think all of the students, and there was like maybe 20 students, all of them rated like either 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10 as far as like accuracy. And then they all then James Randi has them all take their piece of paper and then pass it back, and then the last person in the row hands it to the front person, and they all realize they all had exactly the same information. They all said exactly the same thing. And there's these. I'm trying to think what the name for these statements is, and I can't think of it. But there's a specific name.
Is it a video we can like on YouTube or something, or?
I know for sure it's on YouTube, but I wouldn't. It's been a long time since I've actually seen this video, so I don't remember. If you look up James Randi, you would be able to find it eventually. But anyway, there's a specific name for these types of statements that are just they're very broad statements, but they sound very specific. And the reason that they work essentially is because basically we all feel like it'd be statements kind of like I am a hard worker or something like that, something that most people feel like applies to them, but is kind of this broad statement of just about how people tend to feel about themselves.
It's like saying I am a good driver, because everyone thinks they're a good driver.
Right. So it would be that kind of thing. But like I said, there's a specific name for those statements, and I can't think of what they're called. But
you don't want to crush Skylar Fiction's worldview regarding psychics after he told us that story about his wife.
Reduce it to absurdity.
Skylar's worldview is reduced to absurdity. We're done. Another deist down. So I think just to burn through these last couple of questions here, you guys said the New Age medicines and stuff, or New Age beliefs weren't prevalent where you're at, but like I said, in the liberal states or areas of the country, the New Age medicine thing is really huge. It is huge out here. And overall, do you think this could be harmful to society in the sense that this view of Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, This view, a lot of these people that follow like alternative medicines and homeopathy have a great disdain for Western medicine. They don't like to go to doctors. When you have a headache, you rub peppermint oil on your temples. It's, at the end of the day, you get hit by a bus, you go to the hospital, and that's the point I always came to was, this is great if you have a headache or joint pain or something, but if you're in a car accident, you're not going to go, hey, take me to a yoga guy to meditate. You're going to go, take me to the hospital so I can set this fractured leg, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Christians though too. I mean, they'll pray for you when you're sick, but when you're really sick, you go to the doctor.
Right. But the sick part to me is I try to explain this to certain people that have had relatives that are in the hospital, they're sick or they're dying or they got a disease or something, and they're upset at the doctor, right? They're like, they gave him this medicine, this didn't work, this made it worse, and and this and that. These doctors don't know what they're doing. And I pulled this person aside and I said, do you know how difficult it is to figure out like what's wrong with the person, what medicines are the best to work? Do they have any allergies? What's the right dosage? I mean, it's not like it's a car where they go in and go, oh, it's your carburetor, let me change that. You know what I mean? And then boom, they know what's going on right away, right? A lot of it is
Right.
them having to try stuff and try the best stuff, and do tests and this and that. And it's this, these are the same people that tend to follow this alternative medicine and this, they're just scared of doctors and they don't trust them, and
Yeah, to me, it's an indication that they are not applying good critical thinking, and their standards of discerning truth from things that are not true and not real are set too low, and if it's set that way for one thing, I think it leaves room at least for you to have false beliefs about other things. So, evidence and the ability to test things to figure out whether they are true or false, that's the important thing. These wishy-washy things that are what you've classified as woo-woo here, they're labeled that because they're either not testable, or when they are tested they don't pass.
yeah. It was a very frustrating situation because it finds me in the position where, I don't go out of my way to defend doctors or hospitals and stuff, but I find myself on a platform that I don't normally argue for. It's like I have to argue for a hospital, like really, like I don't get it. Like I have to argue because they want to run an IV, like.
Yeah, to your point too earlier, there's all these. It's this mindset where you want to have this very simplistic idea of cause and effect. Okay, well, you take this medicine and then the effect is that you're better. Well, that's great when it works, but we are just bundles of chemicals, and then our solution, the doctors give us different chemicals, and sometimes there's side effects, and sometimes it doesn't work quite the way we want it to. But we have to do the best we can using science and medicine that has been tested. But to just take like a crystal and sleep with a crystal underneath your pillow or something like that, you're looking for that very simplistic cause and effect relationship, but it doesn't exist, and there's no reason to think it exists.
Yeah, and I'll give you one more kind of example. I have a nephew who's autistic, and he's gone through, I can't tell you how many types of medications or combinations of various medications, right? To sort of like because one medication keeps him from having seizures, but that medicine also makes him have mood swings, so he'll fly into like a rage, for example. So then have that medication to cure that, not cure, but to keep the rages down, and and they're constantly going through this like process, right? And he's 20-something now, and people are like, you tell this story to people, it doesn't come up very often, but they're like, I don't understand, like, why can't the doctors figure this out? And I'm like, do you know how much of a broad spectrum autism is, first of all? And it's like having a wall with 1,000 holes, and you have 5 pegs, and these 5 pegs will be perfect, medicine, the perfect combination of medicines. It's trial and error in many ways for him, right? This doesn't work, or this doesn't work as well, they'll change it, or they'll reduce the dosage, or they'll up the dosage, and if that doesn't work, they'll change this part, or they'll change the dosage, you know what I mean? And it's this constant, like, balancing act with them. But people, they want...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, they seem to think that if you're a doctor or if you go to a hospital, that there's this instant answer, and if you don't have it, then they just throw out the whole book, like, oh, Western medicine sucks, and it's like, well,
right.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and there unfortunately doesn't mean that there is always going to be a perfect solution either. I mean,
right.
You might have to live with side effects, unfortunately.
Right. Exactly, but it's kind of like when a theist says, hey, how do you explain logic? Or because what Skylar was saying, if you don't have an answer, like I've been asked these questions, I'm like, I'm not a doctor, like why would you ask me, like but they're like, well, if they don't have an answer right away, then they're wrong, like the whole thing is just messed up, and it's like, well, I doubt sleeping with crystals under his pillow is going to cure his autism, or make it better or more manageable. So. Well, anyway, I think we've burned through the questions either directly or indirectly. Skylar, how's the baby? Is she okay?
Yeah, now we got her some milk, and now she's chilling.
Do you have like a selfie stick like attached to your belt or something that follows you around, or?
No, it's just me holding my laptop. I'm walking around.
Was it really?
Yeah. Now I'm just holding it with one hand. I've learned to multitask since having the second child with it.
Oh, you have 2? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got a 5-year-old. Well, no, yeah, I got a 5-year-old, and then this baby 6 months. So it's I don't recommend it. No, I'm just kidding.
Skylar isn't actually working out. He's just chasing kids around the house. That's enough exercise.
Dude, it's seriously, man. The first year is always the roughest, man, because it's the baby time. You're on like what I call suicide watch. Because like babies have no sense of like knowing what danger is, basically. Hey, I want to jump first off this couch. I'm gonna go for it. It's like, what are you doing, baby? You can't do that. So you have to always be vigilant, and I don't know, man. But you know what I was gonna say is, do you think? Okay, so you were talking about like with the crystal people, these people you were meeting with, that run these stores, right? Do you think the owners are all in on it? Like, do they know it's bullshit and they're just selling it? Or do you think, like, it's legitimate, like, not in the sense it's legitimate as if it works, but legitimate in the sense that they believe it works, the people who sell these products and make these crystals?
That's a question.
From my experience here in the Los Angeles area, where people, I gotta assume on some level, and this is strictly speculation, but if so much of the general populace believes in it, there's got to be some store owners that open up a store that believe in themselves. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say that everybody thinks it's bullshit, or but a lot of these guys, you talk to them, man, and they just they sound very convinced. Like, I don't know, I mean, it's pretty big business out here, so who's to say? But
yeah, it'd probably be hard to pick out the ones who, if there are any who are in it just for the money, because you're not gonna make money if you don't sound convinced, or you got to be a snake oil salesman, even if you know it's snake oil that you're selling.
If I was to guess, if I was to make just a pulled right out of my ass guess, I would say a minimum 3/4 believe in it.
Yeah.
I mean, out here, I mean, I know it's like LA and stuff, and Hollywood's full of like shysters and stuff, but I mean, I'm telling you, on some level, it's man, it's crazy out here, And I'm one of those guys, like, my ex-girlfriend was also a yoga teacher, so I understand the exercise benefits of yoga, right? This is one of those things that, as an exercise, it's fucking awesome, right? I mean, nothing will get you tight and right better than yoga. I tried it once and it kicked my ass. There's different types, right? So she did one where it was like you did it in like 108 degrees, right? So you're just sweating for like the whole time. It just burns off. It just burns off fat and shit. But the spirituality part is the part that really, I could never get into, right? So even if you go to a place that, just for the exercise purposes of it, there's always that sort of thing where you're going to go, like, I'm going to leave now. But yeah, out here, man, it's. I think people really do buy into it. It's kind of sad to say, I guess. So
I think that's the to me the most interesting question about it is the whoever starts any of these beliefs, like, do they really believe on some level? Are they fooling themselves, or are they just completely, deceptive about it? I think that's such an interesting question, and I feel like for something like the woo woo stuff, I think it's a lot easier, at least in my head, to think that that could be a sincere belief most of the time. When you have essentially, I would imagine, coincidences creating a false sense of cause and effect in somebody's head. They sleep with this crystal underneath their pillow and good things happen to them or whatever. I could see that a lot easier than kind of more the mainstream religious superstitions arising naturally. But
yeah,
I think that's an interesting thing to ponder.
I kind of see the sleeping with the crystals as like it's no different than having like a dream catcher at your window or a crucifix over your bed. In a lot of ways, it's like ritualistic superstition.
Yeah, or a baseball player who doesn't shave or whatever because he's on a hitting streak or something like that.
Like I remember my ex-girlfriend and I were looking for an apartment in LA, and we looked at this place, and it was too small for us. But the lady was like, she was like, I'm an energy worker, and the couple that used to live here before we used to fight a lot, and there was a lot of negative energy in that space, and so I did an energy ritual, and I cleansed it of all the negative energy that's in the room. So now it's safe to live in, so to speak. And I'm like,
Whew.
right. Well, sign me up. When do you want your down payment? But I'm just kind of like, all right, that's yeah, cool. Thanks. You know what I mean? I'm all, can we get new appliances instead? But my girlfriend at the time, she knew she was just like, kind of shut up. I know what you're gonna say, kind of thing. But she totally bought into it, right? She's like, you buy the sage and this, and you burn it and you cleanse for evil or negative energy in spaces, and she was into that too. And it's just like, but there's no, what else I found kind of peculiar is a lot of these people are raised, like I said in the beginning, to believe stuff before they don't believe stuff, right? There's it out here, having that sort of skepticism up front, people actually look down upon you in many ways. So it's kind of an odd effect, actually. Like you come across and you raise an eyebrow and you go, oh, you're an energy worker, what does that mean? And they go, well, I work with energy. And I'm like, really? Can you define what that energy is? Because I never heard of it. And they go, oh, well, it's an energy. You know what I mean? There's no explanation.
Power plant?
It was that.
You said you work at the power plant? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right. Like they don't, oh, it permeates the universe. I'm like, what? Are you a Jedi? Like, what is this? What are you talking about? I don't understand. But if you ask questions, then they freaking look at you like you're an asshole, and then so it's just,
You're supposed to go with it.
You're right. That's what I'm saying. You're just supposed to be like, yeah, cool, thanks,
Yeah, the coworker that I mentioned earlier, who was like showing me numerology or whatever, and she's told me that she considers herself a spiritual person, not a religious person. But she complained, like, I don't know how it came up, but I mentioned at some point that I had gone to some event related to the free thinkers here in Arkansas, and she'd said, well, how she had gone to the free thinkers event something or other before and was really disappointed that they weren't free thinkers in the sense that they weren't open to just anything. And I was like, well, free thinkers is really the freedom that they're talking about is the freedom to question anything, but to apply kind of rational skepticism to it all. And so if you're putting forth ideas that don't stand up to testability and these kinds of things, then they will probably be not open to those things until you have evidence that they're true. And she was very disappointed that free thinkers were not open to all of her spirituality and numerology and whatever.
But that's the thing. She's assuming that they never looked into it, and that's a big assumption, right? The reason they're at the position that they're in was because they probably analyzed it at some point, using critical thinking, and they came to a conclusion that is probably not true, or true. So.
Right. That there's not evidence to say that it's true, to reach the conclusion that it is real or true.
Right. Well, yeah.
Sense. Yeah.
There you go. That's what I meant. So, well, anyway, I think we burned through these questions. Anyone have anything to say about this New Age stuff?
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
We learned so much today about worldviews and spirituality and Skylar's wife and like my ex-girlfriend and all sorts of stuff. This is quite a show. So I think that's pretty much it. Anyone else? Anything going on? Any plugs? Skylar, you talking any crazy people? Theists.
I can't. If I can get them on my channel, everyone seems to keep backing down that I get. I'm supposed to get that slavery guy from Bible Thumbing Wingnut. He told me he was gonna come on. Then all of a sudden he's like, oh well, now I've got to move and I've got to spend every minute packing for the next 2 months for some reason. I'm like, dude, it's an hour one night. Just fucking get on the internet and talk to me. No, that's it. Unfortunately, I ended up going and I had to go into other people's rooms to get people to come on. So hopefully, if you're a Christian, you want to come on chat, come on and just send me. I'll pretty much talk to anybody. I don't even really care anymore. Just come on my show. I just hate, like, I love this. Like, this is like, what, 4 of us doing a hangout. We don't talk over each other, and, we listen to each other. I really hate rooms of 10 people because it's infuriating and it's just too much, and then nothing gets accomplished.
It's tough to really get a word in edgewise, and by the time that I've tried it like a couple times, and I just get really frustrated. By the time you want to say something, right? You'll end up having to write it down because you don't want to forget it. But then by the time you get to actually speak up, they're like 20 minutes past that point, and it's mind-numbingly frustrating. Gabby, any hangouts coming up soon? Any comments? Anything interesting going on?
I've been busy in the comment threads on a few different things, but nothing that's really newsworthy or whatever. I did see a couple of interesting movies that I'd plug. If anybody has not seen Spotlight yet, it's out on DVD or whatever, so you can.
We're doing it next show, right?
Is that the next show? Okay, well, so watch it, and then when we talk about it in the show, you'll see what it is.
There's 2 movies.
Yeah, and then the second one is Don Verdeen, and that's also on. It's out on Netflix, and it's about it. It's fictional and it's kind of a comedy. It's kind of a dry comedy, but it's interesting, and the kind of the thrust of the show, or the what's the word I'm looking for?
Plot?
Well,
you said thrust.
Yeah. It's about a Christian archaeologist who goes to prove the Bible and whatever, and that's his main kind of ministry. I'm using air quotes around that. So.
Gotcha. All right, Turtle. You got anything going on?
Yeah, Heretical Weekends, number 31 in 2 weeks. Come check it out.
I take it back. This is actually number 29.
Heretical Weekends, number 31 in 2 weeks. Come check it out.
I totally failed to realize that the title of it is actually at the bottom of my screen. I hadn't noticed that until we were already in talking about worldviews. I was like, I'll correct that shit in the end. But we haven't done a Heretical movie review in quite some time. So we're going to watch those 2 movies, review them on the next show. Skylar, you're more than welcome to watch it if you wanted to give some comments. And I think we're probably, as far as movie reviews go, there hasn't been a lot lately, but I'm sure we're going to talk about God's Not Dead, the sequel.
Yeah, when's that coming out? That should be great.
They did the premiere here in Arkansas because it was filmed in Arkansas.
There's a shock.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That one movie will probably be an entire episode.
Yeah,
About
yeah. And
complaining
there's going to be a
about
shit ton of, like, the Bible Reloaded will probably, those guys will probably do it, and there'll be a ton of reviews. But
Yeah.
I imagine we're all gonna watch it on some level. So, and by the time it comes out, it should be on Netflix relatively quickly, right? So, I mean,
I don't know, we'll find out.
so anyway, we're gonna watch those. We'll shoot the movies over to you, Skylar, and if you want to watch them and join it next week or in 2 weeks, just give me a message or something. Let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you know if I'm off. I'll definitely come on here. I've already seen Spotlight, so I'm just gonna watch that. Watch that other one.
And don't forget,
Don Verdeen.
And don't forget, folks, this is the only show that's brave and/or stupid enough to go opposite of the Magic Sandwich Show.
Yeah, with guest starring Ozzy, right?
Yeah, Ozzy actually wanted to join this hangout, but he had Magic Sandwich, and
yeah.
I was like, wow. I tried to keep it in 2 hours. It's Ozzy would have been probably have a lot of to say regarding worldviews and stuff, but then the show would have been 4 hours. But I love Ozzy. He's a good dude. So, all right, everybody, thanks for showing up, and spread the word and share this shit because we're awesome. All right, bye.
Bye.